In the year 2006, Satoru Fujinuma is a 29-year-old struggling mangaka in Chiba, who occasionally experiences a phenomenon he refers to as revival, in which he is sent back in time to prevent a fatal incident from occurring near him. He uses it to save a boy from a speeding truck, though he has to spend a few days in the hospital as a result. Eri Katajiri, a co-worker, praises him for his life-saving efforts as he recovers. Later, his mother, Sachiko, pays him a visit and reminds him of an incident that occurred 18 years ago in their hometown of Hokkaido. An adult named Jun Shiratori, whom Satoru had trusted, was arrested for the kidnapping and murder of 3 local children, 2 of whom were Satoru's classmates. The next day, as Satoru goes through another revival, Sachiko notices a man who appears to be attempting to kidnap a child. Sachiko deduces that the man is the true killer from 18 years ago while investigating the case, but she is murdered in Satoru's apartment before she can inform anyone. Satoru's revival transports him back to 1988, when he was a 10-year-old elementary school student in Hokkaido, just as he discovers Sachiko's body and is accused of murdering her. Satoru finds solace in being able to see his mother again as he becomes increasingly perplexed by his situation. Satoru notices Keo Hinazuki, one of his classmates who was killed by the serial kidnapper, and notices a bruise on her leg, realizing that being sent to this period by revival is linked to Sachiko's future murder. Satoru reads an essay written by Keo, which hints at her troubled home life, on the advice of his friend Kenya Kobayashi. Satoru decides to invite Keo to his birthday party in the hopes of changing the future and preventing her from being killed. Satoru holds back from winning a race against a classmate to avoid inadvertently trying to change the future, angering the classmate and disappointing Keo. Satoru deduces that Keo will be abducted on March 1st because her birthday is on the same day as his, March 2nd. Satoru spends some time with Yuuki, still convinced that the kidnapper is not him. Following that, Satoru discovers Keo beaten up in her home shed, where he learns the full extent of her abusive relationship with her mother, Akemi. The next day, Satoru meets with his teacher, Gaku Yashiro, who tells him that he has suspected Akemi of abuse for nearly a year but hasn't been able to find enough evidence to convict her. Later, when Keo is accused of stealing the class lunch money, Satoru defends her before taking her up a mountain to show her a frost-covered Christmas tree. Satoru is able to persuade Keo to accompany him to the local science center with the help of Sachiko. Throughout the outing, Satoru experiences deja vu and becomes concerned that he is repeating himself. After March 1st, the day Keo went missing, passes without incident. Satoru and Keo are able to celebrate their birthdays the following day, with Satoru confident that he has changed history. Satoru is taken aback the next day when he discovers Keo has not shown up for school. Satoru becomes enraged that he was powerless to prevent Keo's disappearance, and another schoolgirl goes missing a few days later. After seeing Akemi toss Keo's belongings out the window, Satoru finds himself back in 2006, still suspected of Sachiko's murder and forced to flee the cops. Satoru soon meets Eri, who believes he is innocent and invites him to stay at her home, where he learns that the circumstances surrounding Keo's disappearance have changed slightly as a result of his actions. The next day, as Satoru continues his investigation, Eri intervenes to prevent her manager from reporting Satoru to the police. After assisting, Eri receives a text from Sachiko's phone before becoming trapped in a house fire later that night. Satoru rushes in to save Eri from the burning house, slipping her phone into his pocket before the manager takes over the rescue. When Satoru discovers the message on Eri's phone, he dials a number that Sachiko had left behind and arranges a meeting with Sawada, a journalist friend of hers. Sawada informs Satoru of Sachiko's last phone call, in which she claimed to know who the true kidnapper was but was unable to tell him before she was killed. He also clarifies the details surrounding Keo's death, noticing Yuuki's framing matches with another kidnapping incident in a nearby town and deducing that the true kidnapper was the one who killed Sachiko. While Satoru researches Sawada's findings on the kidnapping incident, including a list of previous suspects. Sawada goes to the hospital to meet with Eri, only to discover that her mother has taken her place in order to prove Satoru's innocence. Satoru meets with Eri, who informs him of a mysterious man named Nishizono who may be responsible for the fire. But the cops arrive and arrest him. Satoru notices the man he saw leaving his apartment the night Sachiko was murdered as he is being taken away. Satoru successfully triggers his revival through sheer willpower, returning him to February 28, 1988, determined not to let things end the way they are. Kenya confronts Satoru about Keio's home situation the next day at school, admitting that he has known about the domestic violence for some time and offering his help. On March 2nd, after Yuuki's birthday party, Satoru throws a rock through his window, causing the police to arrive, giving Yuuki an alibi for his whereabouts. Satoru then seeks out Akemi and comes dangerously close to pushing her down some stairs before being stopped by Kenya, who persuades him to take a different path. Instead, Satoru decides to abduct Keio with her permission, transporting her to an abandoned bus where she will hide for a few days until her safety is confirmed. However, on the night of March 3rd, while Keio is sleeping, an unknown intruder enters the bus. Keio manages to elude the intruder who exits the bus, leaving a footprint on a kicked box. Keio tells Satoru and the others about the previous night's intruder as Yashiro, and some people from the Child Consultation Center go to Keio's house to investigate. They find tools that Satoru recognizes as the ones used to implicate Yuuki in Keio's murder, as well as a briquette presumed to belong to the killer, in a rucksack that was left behind. Satoru takes Keio to his house, where Sachiko had been expecting them, after realizing he is still stuck in the loop of abduction murders. The next day, Keio has her first home-cooked breakfast, which causes her to break down in tears. Later, Satoru and Sachiko return to Keio's house to confront Akemi. As Akemi reacts violently to Satoru and Sachiko's accusation, Yashiro and the consultants catch her red-handed and suggest that Keio be taken into custody. Just as Akemi is about to call the cops, she is approached by her estranged mother, who expresses regret for not being able to help her after she divorced her abusive husband and raised Keio on her own, prompting Akemi to regret her own actions. Satoru turns his attention to the other two potential victims, Hiromi Sujita, a classmate, and Aya Nakanishi, a student from the neighboring school, now that Keio has gone to live with her grandmother. When Satoru is given a ride home by Yashiro, he discovers a stash of candy in his car while keeping an eye on both Hiromi and Aya. Later, Satoru joins Kenya and Hiromi to inspect the bus, which has had its contents removed. Satoru and his friends approach Aya, who, despite some reluctance at first, begins to join them at their hideout. Satoru then follows Masato Yanagihara, who has remained quiet since being accused of framing Keio. She appears to vanish after using the restroom. Satoru then notices Yuuki's family's truck driving away from the scene and asks Yashiro to follow it in his car. Along the way, Yashiro reveals that he is the assassin and that Satoru is the one who is thwarting his plans. He explains how he used Masato as bait to entice Satoru into the stolen car, which he then drives into a frozen lake, trapping Satoru inside. After 15 years in a coma as a result of Yashiro's attempt to kill him, Satoru awakens in the year 2003. His mother took care of him on a daily basis as his body continued to grow. He has, however, lost his memories of previous events. Kenya and Hiromi, as well as Keio, Hiromi's wife and mother to their baby, pay Satoru a visit. Satoru's memories begin to resurface as a result of his friends' visits. Later, he meets Kumi, a leukemia patient who is about to undergo surgery, as well as Yashiro, who has changed his name to Nishizono and is now a politician. Yashiro takes Satoru to the rooftop 2 days before Kumi's surgery, where he confirms Yashiro's suspicions that he has regained his memory. Satoru's memories returned after Keio's visit, and he told Kenya and Hiromi that Yashiro was the murderer, according to a flashback. Back on the rooftop, Yashiro boasts that his previous crimes have already run their course and that he will not be arrested. He reveals that he has planned to murder Kimi with the tampered IV drip and frames Satoru for the crime. Yashiro threatens to throw Satoru off the roof, making it appear as if he committed suicide. Satoru, on the other hand, calls Yashiro's bluff, claiming that he can't live without him. This appears to be the case when Yashiro prevents Satoru from rolling his wheelchair off the roof. Yashiro, on the other hand, lets Satoru go and prepares to commit suicide himself. Yashiro is then arrested for attempted murder after learning that Satoru has been safely apprehended by his friends. Satoru has since established himself as a successful manga artist. Satoru unexpectedly runs into Eri under the same bridge where they used to sit and where he went missing during his last revival. Subscribe to get a waifu.